10 to 20% of all businesses that actually go to market to try to sell their business will actually sell. The remainder will not.
Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Andy Erskine. He's got a company. It's called Voyage Acquisitions, correct? Thanks for taking the time, Andy. I really
Thanks for
appreciate
inviting me. I'm looking forward to this.
Well, I think you can add a lot of value because we have a lot of business folks and business owners that listen to this thing. And the thing that a lot of business owners don't think about is, what does the business look like when it's finished, and what does it look like when I want to exit? And the thing that people forget is, like, I might not want to exit 10 years from now, but I might need to for some reason, or 5 years or 15 years. So I literally ask everybody the question, hey, what's the business look like when it's finished? So you're the expert on all this stuff. So that's why we're going to tap at least 4% of your wisdom today. Okay. Okay. So tell me first, you've been doing this a long time. How long have you been doing business broker stuff? 10, 20 years?
Not quite 20 years, but really started in the Main Street brokerage in late 2019 after a long career in consulting, helping companies, prepare to be acquired by private equity.
Okay. And were you shocked at how many businesses wanted to sell but weren't sellable? So talk to me about that, because I've heard I know the stats are it's over 80% in Texas that are listed for sale won't sell, but we've had some great conversations about this. So give me your
I mean, just industry standard from like IBB, like the International Business Brokers Association, and some of the larger firms like national franchise firms, is the industry standard seems to be that 10 to 20% of all businesses that actually go to market to try to sell their business will actually sell. The remainder will not, for numerous reasons.
Oof. And I have a pretty good idea of what those reasons are. I'll give you my first one. The business owner. Without the business owner, there is no business. Is that the reason?
It's a big one. I would say the number one reason is that they're not profitable, but they still go to market, unfortunately. So like business owners try to sell their business even though it's not profitable.
Yeah, and who wants to buy a business that's not profitable? I'm sure there are instances where not profitable businesses sell, but my guess is that's because they have some physical assets, they have land or some intellectual property or something.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely correct. Typically, it's actual fixed hard assets, right, at a liquidated value that they sell at. If they sell, the times those businesses won't sell, but there's a lot of them in the market, and even the ones that don't go. I mean, it's just amazing when you drive down the street, you assume that a business, at brick and mortar, you're driving down the street, you see that strip center, there's 7 to 10 businesses in that strip center. You would think, hey, all of those are profitable businesses. It's probably not the case.
Yeah. In fact, sadly, a large number of them probably aren't. And since I've been doing this business coaching thing, like, it's been a few years, and it's amazing to me how many people have what they call a business, but it's a kind of a low paying job. And so you're taking a low. This is very sad. It's like the stark reality is you're taking something that you got into it thinking you're going to make a whole bunch of money. You're going to have all this time and freedom and fun, and it was going to be great. And then you got bogged down in the weeds. And now it's like, golly, I hope we can make payroll. And man, if I could just, get out of this thing, I would just breaking even, I think would be great. And it's so sad because there's areas where people could do so much better if they would just have a plan. What do you see is the best? Like, what does it make? Let's do the positive now. What makes a really good selling?
I mean, a really good selling business is something where there is more than just the business owner. And I don't care about gross revenue necessarily or profit in this conversation. Is that there is a business without the owner, or at least like let's say that there's at least 3 or 4 team members within the business that do a very specific function, and that the business owner is no longer doing that, or is doing a minor point of that function. That's a business, right? And then also it makes it even more of a business, or a better business, if it's documented, are those standard operating procedures documented, even at a high level? If they're bullet pointed out, at least some general functionality that somebody could train to, that's really important. The next thing is having books. A lot of people think, oh, well, financials. And I guess let me be more specific. If you're a small business, let's say you're doing less than $5 million, typically QuickBooks is going to be the system, the bookkeeping system that you
Mhm.
use. And you're going to have a profit and loss statement, or they also call it an income statement. And then you also have a proper balance sheet. The biggest thing that we see though is that business owners don't outsource this and they think they know what they're doing. So they're setting up their books incorrectly from the start. And that can really create headaches and pain and devalue their business if they ever have to sell.
Yeah, also, they might be hurting themselves from even from a tax
Yeah.
point of view, right? If you're not doing this stuff right, you might be missing out on opportunities for tax savings or whatever that is, just because you don't wanna
I,
pay a
I
bookkeeper.
always say that the smartest business owners outsource the things that don't generate revenue, which is bookkeeping, payroll, some of these high level things. And then also, business owners can be, very secluded, almost like hermits, right? A lot of their friends and family aren't business owners. And so they have nobody to talk to. If they're not networking and talking with other business owners or have a business coach to actually talk to about this stuff, they're really doing a disservice to themselves.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Business ownership is can be or being a CEO as well, can be just super, like,
Mhm.
lonely, honestly, because you don't have anybody to collaborate with, and I found that as in, business coaching, some of the stuff I literally talked to a guy 2 days ago, and he's like, "Well, look, I've got some ideas here," and he's a CEO of a company that's probably at I think they're at about 30 million right now in revenue, and he's like, I've got a board of directors, they're super smart people, and I've got, my COO and CFO and all those people, but I've got some ideas that I need to discuss and we've got to have some plans and I can't take them to my board because they might think I'm crazy. I can't really take them to my CFO and COO necessarily either. I need somebody I can talk to and strategize this stuff out with, right? You got to have accountability, you got to have some means of just making this of decision making. And if you're just stuck in a room by yourself, that's a
It
lonely place
is.
to
It
be.
is. Been there.
Do you? So you have your own business now.
It's
You're a business broker.
going
How's
good.
that
I
going?
mean, so, through the business broker venture, right? I started as a single unit franchisee. Within a year, ended up buying an existing franchisee within the same system. So, you know, that was a really big growth opportunity for us, and it was one of the best investments I ever made. Going through, that brand, being a multi-unit owner, exiting, and then starting out with the other brand, helping them get started and becoming a single unit franchisee and area developer with them, and then exiting that in January of 2025. I now have no partners in Voyage Acquisitions, so that was a big thing. Bought out my partner last year, so that was really beneficial for me. And yeah, he just didn't want to be involved. Completely understand. I am perfectly fine with it. No hard feelings. Love him. Don't. It's just, so now I am the only owner, and it's a lot. Some days it's a lot, right? As a business owner, you know,
Mm.
most people look at their jobs when they work for somebody. It's a 9 to 5. They're not as involved or engaged in the business. And this isn't to say this is everybody, but everything falls back on the business owner. The accountability. You may try to delegate some of the responsibilities within the business, but at the end of the day, the business owner is still accountable. I'm still accountable to every single client, even if one of my advisors is representing that transaction. I am still accountable for the culture. I'm still accountable for this, our guys and gals following the systems and processes and just meeting basic, expectations and following our standard operating procedures. That can be a full-time job if you're not careful.
Yeah, and the thing is, I liked what you said earlier, talking about, hey, look, if you delegate the non-revenue making activities, well, some like building culture and some of that actually is like you got to have something defined and what are your non-negotiables and all those things. But man, you can get wrapped up in a whole bunch of minutia that's not frankly going to make you any money, and without profit and revenue, really, it's not a business, not for very
Right.
long anyway.
I mean, like guilty though. Like, I mean, still small business owner, right? We may have a team of 8 or 9 people, across the country. But what was I doing this morning? I was putting postage on 25 postcards this morning before I got to the office. So I woke up early to make sure I got that done. Revenue, but that was in some way, shape, or form that was revenue generating.
Yeah, at least you were probably trying to sell
Right,
something with
right.
the postcards, right? Like, so there's something in there. You could get that under the umbrella. Well, and I do think too, the other thing that I can say about business ownership, because I've gotta drink my own Kool-Aid or
Mhm.
follow my own advice, or I can't be the plumber with the broken toilet. So I've got to actually do the things that I tell others to do. But I don't mind watching the Super Bowl and working on in QuickBooks or
Mhm.
whatever, figuring out my plan for the next week or doing some email correspondence. I don't mind it because it's my business. Like I don't, it doesn't, it's not like I'm working for corporate and having to grind till 9 o'clock at night for some other person making all the money. At least we get the rewards or potential rewards from that. And that's, I think,
Yeah. I mean,
motivation,
it's your
right?
revenue, right? I mean, at the end of the day. And you get to be proud of it.
Yeah.
And you also, if it doesn't come to fruition, guess who's accountable? You.
Yeah. Guess who's eating
Right.
ramen? So I like that. Tell me about your kind of what's your forecast for, because I have some really interesting ideas. We probably are aligned in this, but what's your forecast for businesses? What are the most sellable businesses going to be in the next five
So
years?
that's a loaded question. And I'd like to refine it a little bit more to let's say,
No, you have to answer it just like I said. I'm kidding. No,
let's look
yeah,
at
please.
Texas, for example. I mean, there are some really big sectors that we have. We have we have technology, we have healthcare, and we have construction. And you also add oil and gas in there. But oil and gas, you could also say a lot of oil and gas companies fit into the construction space, right? So those
Sure,
three
sure.
industries are going to see exponential growth, especially with AI and a lot of things changing. I see a lot of potential acquisition opportunities in that AI tech space, specifically in Texas, that are going to happen in the next couple of years, especially with Claude code and things like that, where some of these super users are going to be able to create businesses, $1 million revenue plus businesses with 1 or 2 employees, right? I see that as a huge thing,
Mhm.
and they're going to get acquired by their big competitors. Healthcare, it is private equity has already gotten into the healthcare space. Doesn't matter what you think about it, that's the reality. And so that's going to continue as
Yeah.
long as your business fits into their acquisition criteria. You as a doctor, a private doctor, whether it's an your optometrist, ophthalmologist, podiatrist, doesn't matter. As long as you grow a strong business, there's going to be an exit strategy for you. I think the ones that are going to hurt the most are those single doctor offices where they're not, really operating the business at a strong capacity. Let's say they have under 100 or $1 million in gross revenue. Those are really hard to transfer. So we're in that from the medical space, and then construction, oil and gas. We're just booming right now. What we're seeing, although oil prices are down, we're seeing a lot of activity from private individuals looking to buy businesses and other kinds of companies that are selling, whether they're general contractors, flooring, concrete, architectural firms, engineering. All of these things in that vertical of construction have sellable assets. Again, you have to have, a profitable business with standard operating procedures in place, and the business doesn't operate off of the owner. I looked at the financials on an insulation company today, and unfortunately, I can't even call it a company. It was $30,000 in gross revenue in 2024. That's not a company; it's a hobby.
Yeah. It's not even hardly a hobby. That's a job
Well,
at
I
Burger
mean, well,
King,
it's a hobby
actually.
because it wasn't making money. That's my definition.
Exactly.
Once the business starts making money, then it's no longer a hobby. If it's costing you money to do it, that's a hobby.
Yeah, if you're a musician and you're getting paid, you can call yourself a professional, but if you haven't made any money at it,
Yeah,
you just have a
right,
hobby, you just
right.
play music. That's the way it is. Okay, so I think Here's my thing, and this is where I was going. I've said this to several people, so I hope I'm right. I think I am. Okay, so I believe that with I mean, we talked about AI. Obviously, it's going to accelerate some businesses, and it's going to be a job loser for some folks as well. But I think when I think about AI proof businesses, I'm with you. Like all the construction, all the trades, all the auto repair shops, all those folks have a sellable business with a
Yeah.
long-term play in jobs that we cannot replace
Mhm.
by AI. And I believe there are private equity firms coming in and starting to gobble those up.
Yeah,
Would that
and
be
there's a
correct?
lot of pent-up equity and capital that needs to be spent by these companies, by these private equity companies. And what's surprising is, people used to think, hey, private equity didn't touch something unless it was $25 million. We're seeing private equity buying companies for less than 2 million. That because they need to spend the money, they've really broadened their acquisition criteria. And there's some smaller firms out there, family offices and independent sponsors, like individuals who are sponsored by these private equity companies and these family offices that are looking to buy smaller acquisitions and then do roll ups. So there's a lot of that happening, specifically in auto. With the new administration in place, people were afraid, or a lot of the auto repair shops were afraid that everybody was going to go to electric and there wasn't going to be a business model there. With that, with some of those benefits being taken away, I really see auto repair staying, very consistent for the long term. Let's be honest, cars are expensive. People aren't wanting to spend 75,000 to $100,000 on a new car. They're willing to fix their 5, 8 year old vehicle and keep operating.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Do you think that I mean, I like the idea of buying a business versus building a business because you get a customer database and you buy customers. Do you agree with that
Yes.
statement?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it's because it takes too building the customer database, the hardest and most
Mhm.
expensive part. Building a demand for your product is the
Yeah.
hardest part. So if you can buy that instead of just, try to build it, my gosh, it
It,
could save
it,
you a
it
lot of money.
can, and it can be about the same investment. If you specifically look at franchise investments, right? Franchise startups, you're aware of this, you're a franchisee. I've been a franchisee in the past, and they tell you what your initial investment is to start up this franchise. What I'm seeing now, and this is more specific to brick and mortar, is you're able to buy an existing business that day one will generate you revenue, and it's going to cost you less than the typical investment of building it out from scratch. Yeah.
Makes sense. So let's just say, because here's the other thing I say to people a lot. So if you're valuing a business, you've got physical assets, you got intellectual property, all the things. But then after that, you've got two main components. It's how much profit is it throwing, and that's reported real profit. So you got to quit paying the lawn guy to do your house, and you got to do some of that stuff. So it's reported real profit. And then there's how clean is it, books, and how easy is it to buy, and those are multipliers. So if you got a really good profit and you got a really clean business with great books and systems and
Mhm.
processes written down, you can get a higher multiple.
Yeah,
Do you agree
absolutely.
with
There
that?
there are multiplier effects in the valuation of businesses. Most people consider only the positive the valuation multipliers, right?
Mm,
And typically everybody says, "Oh, well, I took $200,000 in cash last year. I'm just going to put that on the bottom line and apply that same 2 to 3x multiple. Let's say use that as an example." But the reality is what you report on the tax return, that's what you get a multiple of. You don't get a multiple of what you don't report. Business owners that are not paying their employees all through their W-2 wages, maybe they're taking cash, maybe they're applying some of their wages in cash. Well, guess what? There is a lot of mess right there and a lot of liability with those team members and somebody acquiring that business because maybe the employees don't want a different structure. So those are like some really big, valuation detractors in a business that
for sure, because it's risk, and owners are gonna if somebody's gonna buy something, most of them are gonna go through some pretty good due diligence, right? And they're gonna ask all the questions and figure this out. And I'm sure you guys are involved in making sure that
we
that's done
yeah,
right
I
as
mean,
well, correct?
All of the clients that we have, we probably, I mean, all of the business owners that we actually help them with their assessment of value on the business to understand what it is, we probably only accept 25% of them as our clients because of numerous factors. So yeah, we don't take on a lot of clients. Now we do provide, that complimentary value of help you value in your business. Hey, what are the next steps that you need to do? Hey, I'm not going to be your consultant or coach, but we have resources for you. And if you decide to, if you decide to take, take
Yeah.
those resources and implement them, you will have a sellable business. Unfortunately, I see some of our competitors will tell these business owners that, here's a list of things that you really need to do before you go sell. And then a month later, I'll see that business listed by another business broker. And that's why we have such a low industry average of businesses that actually go to market actually sell.
Hmm. Yeah, full
Yeah.
circle. It makes sense. So the multiple can vary quite a bit, but if I said the basic math is you take your assets and you take a multiple of your profit, and the multiple could be 1, or it could
Mhm.
be 5, or it could be maybe even more. Would that be a realistic
Realistic
formula?
formula for small business, get rid of the assets because the assets are a requirement to generate that revenue and profit. So majority of businesses, small
Right.
businesses are majority goodwill transactions, i.e. it's all associated towards intangible assets, the name of the business, the customer relationships, the vendor relationships. So it's small business and it's hard to define it. There really is no industry standard. You're typically looking at a 2 to 3x multiple of your small business, typically
Okay.
because there's no key management in place. The books are dirty, and because of these devaluing factors, most businesses are going to be acquired via the SBA 7A program, which is the only option to acquire goodwill heavy businesses in today's market for small business. And so the bank's going to have to approve it. The seller, and you, the buyer, may agree on a 3.5x multiple, but the bank says, nope, we'll lend on 2.3. And that's what you get if you want to sell
Yeah, so just like appraising a house, if you're gonna buy, if you gotta get a loan and you pay 1,000,000 for the house, but it appraises at 600, they're gonna give
it.
you a loan for
Right. And
80% of
you can come
600,
up with the
not
rest
1,000,000.
with, seller financing, more cash at close. But most buyers of businesses don't have that type of liquidity. And that's why they're using these government backed loan programs.
I see, and I'm also guessing that in a lot of these cases, what ends up happening is the business owner finances a portion of the transaction, stays on for a period of time to make sure that the revenue gets in there, and then the business can
That's
transition. Would
fair.
that
And you
be
bring up
fair?
a really good point. The less standard operating procedures that you have in the business, like every business owner thinks that selling the business, like that's the end. The reality is most small business owners don't have standard operating procedures in place. They don't have key management in place. And because of that, they're going to be forced to stay with the business post close and transaction for a longer period of time, let's say 3 to 6 months, if not a year, to successfully transition that business from them as the operator to a new operator. If they can put these things in place, they can actually exit for
For
real
real
exit,
exit.
30-day
Yeah.
transition. That's what we can see if you put everything in place.
It's beautiful. I and so, like, if you go to this, like, if you got a business that's doing a 500,000 in profit and they're pretty clean, it could be they could get a value of 1,000,000 or
Yeah.
1,500,000 potentially. So, if they plan now let's go, what if they plan and they say, "I wanna sell this thing in
Mm-hmm.
4 years." First of all, and you get only one chance to answer this right. After they talk with you, who should they call
They need to call
next?
you. They need to call
Yeah.
Action Coach of Sugarland to put the plan and the process in place. I talked with one of your clients the other day, and he asked Andy, "And will you offer consulting services, to help me, kind of figure some of this stuff out?" I said, "There's really not a lot of value in what I'm going to provide. Your coach is going to tell you the same exact thing."
I love it. You got the answer right, by
Yes.
the way. That's the right answer. Good job. Yes, you got 100% on that. But it is true because then you can turn that 1,000,000 or 1,500,000
Yeah.
into 3,000,000. in 4 years. Like, you could actually step on the gas, because I see owners do it all the time, and you see it, I'm sure, too. They decide they're kinda just start
Mhm.
to slow down, take the foot off the gas a little bit, profit starts to inch down, and all of a sudden, your multiples are going down, and who wants to buy stock
Yeah,
when it's going
and
down?
you bring up another point, thinking about selling 3 to 4 years out. The reality is you need to plan as a business owner today, and you and I, same way, right? We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We're just thankful to wake up and, be able to go do stuff. Majority of business owners exit because they have to exit or there's burnout, right? Like there's a need to retire that's an external factor, i.e. health, divorce, some other things. Prepare to exit your business tomorrow, whether or not you want to do it at all, but that way you're going to have standard operating procedures in place. You're going to have key management in place so that you could actually go take care of, a health issue when it comes up or anything else. That's the reality. We are lucky to wake up every single morning. Business owners are so focused on other variables and they take we as humans take this stuff for granted. Majority of my clients come to me when they need to sell, not when they want to sell. And when you need to sell, you're also probably going to take a lesser amount because it's a need, it's a necessity, and not a desire.
Yes, that's a brilliant point. Yeah, you gotta have it ready. And wow, so everybody's coming to you, and it's not like, "Gosh, this would be nice to do in 5 years." It's more like, "I gotta get rid of this
I had a
thing
client
now."
we sold last month. Okay, older individual, 75 years old. Not in the greatest of health, still healthy, but the business had trended downwards for the last 2 years, and they said, "Well, now's the time to sell." Well, it really wasn't the time to sell, and guess what? When it came to the transition period, they sold the business. They thought, "Oh, well, I'm done." It's like, no, you legally are bound by this contract to show up for 45 days, i.e., 20 hours a week. Go sit in the office and help transition the business. And I understand you needed to retire, but you still have 45 days left.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. Well, good though. This is such great advice, though, as people are starting to really think about it. Because all I'm gonna try to do is provoke some thought. So it's like, I have to have this thing as a
Yeah.
sellable asset. And if I work everything towards that, I can keep it for
Yeah.
as long as I want, as long as I want to keep it. But then if I want to ditch it,
And
I can get rid of
I
it.
think it's less of calling it a sellable asset. Like just make your business an asset. So many times businesses are a liability when it's solely tied around the business owner being there and being able to operate. It's a liability when you're not there. So turn your business into an asset, not a liability.
Brilliant. I love that. Okay, this has been great. Okay, 3 final questions. These are very
Yeah.
serious, okay?
Uh,
So are
I
you ready?
guess
Here we go.
hands on the table.
Take a deep breath. Okay, if you're an animal, what kinda animal
Ooh,
would you be?
an elephant. Oh,
Elephant. Okay, smart. I've had somebody else say elephant, but
it
tell me why.
just
Why
they
elephant?
live a long time. They have very deep emotional relationships with their peers, and I think that's important.
That's beautiful. Yeah, yeah, they keep
Mhm.
their family, and they yeah, yeah, that's good. That's smart. And then what do you wanna be when you grow up?
I want to own numerous small businesses so that I'm diversified and no matter what market we're in.
I love that. That's brilliant. Maybe we'll go in on a couple of those
Love
together. We'll find some good ones and
it.
we'll buy them, juice them up. The last one, wanna be remembered for?
I want to be remembered for caring for people, specifically take care of my family. My whole goal in being a business owner is to make sure that I take care of my aging family and I'm the one that's accountable for that. And that's really, what I want to be remembered for.
That's super cool. I love it. Andy, thank you so much. Voyage Acquisitions. You got to have somebody you can trust be your broker that's going to give it to you straight and give you straight talk. Just like with anything, if you're going to have a trusted advisor, pick one that'll shoot you straight. And you're that guy,
Thanks,
so I
man.
appreciate you. All right, this has been
Absolutely.
fun.
Cheers.
Cheers. So Andy Erskine, lots of wisdom about how you can get the most out of your business, when you should sell, what you should plan for, and best thing he said was that yeah, you got to get a coach to actually scale it up. So, Andy, And if you want straight talk from your business broker, this is your guy.
Liked what you heard? Let's make it real. Schedule your free coaching session today at sugarland.actioncoach.com.